G'day guys, it's Steve here again from Charlie Noise. Just another little mail day video, and I wanted to have a little discussion about some lower end reserve list stuff and just the reserve list in general. This isn't a discussion about any of the bigger kind of upper echelon reserve list cards that people already know about, and the ones that are already expensive. So today, these came in today. These are cards that I bought on a Facebook auction site a little while ago. They've just shown up. And as you can see, there's no real powerhouses here. So I didn't bother, doing the dramatic unveiling of what's in the envelope. What have we got this week? Realistically, outside of a couple of these ones, I think the Llanowar Elves from sort of Dominaria promo card, I think it's the Store Championship open house, whatever that is, which I wanted for my set over in the dining room over there for playing with. That was the most expensive card that I bought, and that was like $7 Australian. Paid a couple of dollars, I think $4 for the revised Royal Assassin. Yeah, I just like him. Mostly because it's revised. Anything old, you know how I feel about these things. But if you have a look here, big lot of cards, 50 odd cards probably, 40 to 50 odd cards in total, I would say. And I reckon most of them cost me literally $1. And they're probably not even worth that much, but hey, they're on the reserve list, so I'm interested in them. And I didn't have a lot of these, and the reason I didn't have a lot of them is mostly because they were very cheap. And so when I was building my reserve list collection, which I've got over here in the office, which we have gone through on a previous video, is that I was buying the ones that I thought had potential to become sort of more expensive in the future, because I'd rather pay $100 now versus $150 or $200 later, if that sort of makes sense. So I avoided all these ones because I was like, oh, they're $1 now, or however much they were. I think they were actually more than that at the time, because when I was initially putting my collection together, that was like right at the tail end of like the COVID kind of, like, as we were coming out of COVID, the big sort of boom spike in reserve list pricing, and they were on the sort of the downtrend, and I was just trying to sort of catch the falling knife kind of thing. And so I was finding that I was I was in for a fair bit of money on a lot of the reserve list cards that I already had, particularly because I was building out my revised set at the time, and I was putting that money into dual lands. And so every time I was like, filling up my shopping basket and then about to pull the trigger on sort of paying buy, I was like, do I really want to spend another $50 on stuff that's essentially worthless, that I can just get like way later down the track? And realistically, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, because one of those cards that was, I didn't see any value in it, I didn't think that it was ever going to become a playable card. It's not here, but it was Forsaken Wastes. So I remember sort of thinking, or like sort of agonizing, humming and hawing about spending, what would have been $7 or $8 per card at the time, and thinking, what kind of mechanic is this? Like, in what universe does this become a desirable and valuable card? I might as well just wait and see what happens, kind of thing. Snoozed on it for ages, and then ultimately Valgavoth comes out, and that, $7 card then suddenly shoots all the way up to $40 US at its peak. You'll know from previous videos that I've since picked up another one. Well, I've picked up a copy of it. But I ended up paying, I think I paid 15 at the time. Oh, no, it was more than that. It was maybe 20, 25 at the time. Which, if I know anything about what number is bigger than the other, I know that 25 is a hell of a lot more than 7. And I could have just had a bunch of them already. And so that's kind of given me renewed impetus to fill in the gaps in the reserve list cards that I was missing. So I've just kind of separated them out. If you have a look here, these are all from Mirage. These are a few from Alliances, and like I say, they're all, you know, $1 or less generally. There might be $2 or $3 cards in there, but there's nothing to, you know, nothing brings any sort of wow factor, if that sort of makes sense. But I just wanted to say that, you know, once upon a time there was a risk that Gus's Scepter was going to do the same. This had a bit of a spike when Nadu came out. I think it was tied to Nadu. It seemed to sort of spike at the same time as when Modern Horizons 3 came out, obviously being a 0 casting cost artifact with you know, with a free activation cost that you could target your own shit with. Yeah, it makes sense. But it just goes to show that, you know, there's nothing to say that at some point in the future that Wizards won't release some sort of commander deck or like, you know, or a set or whatever that utilizes some odd, bizarre mechanic from one of these cards. And then suddenly your $1 card is now a $10 card. So, you know, it doesn't hurt me to own now. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really break the bank. So might as well, hey? There were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. One of them, this is why these are at the front, is because I specifically wanted to talk about these 3 cards. Reparations was one of them. In that, I think Reparations is a perfect example of how the reserve list can be manipulated. It wasn't that long ago, early this year, beginning of the year maybe. I think Wubby put out a video that was, you know, big upping, gassing up the reparations and its potential uses. And, you know, he's a big Magic the Gathering creator. Well, he does Magic Mondays. I think he does Pokemon on the other days. I'm not really sure. I'm really only in this for the Magic content. You know that. And sure enough, all of his people that watch him, and there's a lot of them, they took his advice and FOMO kicked in and they all rushed out and they bought copies of Reparations. Now, I had a couple of spare copies of it and I'm more than happy to sell into that sort of FOMO spike. So, you know, a card that I reckon I paid $3 for this. I've got a price list. I'll bring it up in a second. I'll just have to switch over to desktop for it, that's all. But I think I paid $3 for this. And, you know, I had a handful of them earlier in the year that I was selling for, you know, $30, just because some internet personality, some bloke on YouTube had decided that, hey, let's target this card and promote it, and anybody who was holding them gets to sell into that, you know. And now some poor schmo somewhere else in Australia has paid $30 for what is essentially a $3 card. And that sucks, man. But I've got to say that for anybody that's sort of starting out in the reserve list, anybody who's interested in collecting it, you know, these are the kind of missteps that you're going to take. All you know about them is that they are limited. Nobody really knows the print numbers. We learned about print numbers up until Unlimited, so nobody even... The best we got about Revised and onwards is like an educated guess, essentially. And so people think, oh, well, you know, I better rush out and buy these now before the opportunity goes and they become the next $1 trillion card, which, as we all know, I mean, any card that's not particularly playable and particularly easily castable, you know, so it can operate across multiple decks, you know, they're just not going to hold that value once the interest wanes. And the sellers sell into that market. People quickly realize that, hey, there's not really any realistic likelihood that they're all going to get bought and they're all going to sort of just disappear. You know, there's nobody sort of hoarding, you know, a whole bunch of Reparations or a whole bunch of Ventifax bottles, you know, in a big stack and putting them away for, you know, in the off chance that they they become $100 card. Because realistically, it's not going to happen. You might spend $1 on it now, and then if it goes to $5, what are you going to do? You're going to sell. You've invested $100 to make 500 minus your fees, minus all the effort involved in selling it, and it's just not worth it, really. So a bit rambly, and so it does kind of make sense to pick your cards that are likely to kind of increase in value. If your plan is to sort of maybe sell back into the market and make money off this stuff. Now, as I'm a collector. I like my reserve list stuff. I specifically bought these because I don't have them, and they're disappearing into a folder, with the odd exception, of course. Just to fill out the set. I mean, realistically, specifically if you're talking about Mirage, the funny thing about Mirage is there's only 110 rares in the set, and I think 83 of them, more than 80 of them, 82 or 83 of them are reserve list. And I've already got all the top end ones. So this essentially is sort of setting me on a track to complete an entire set of Mirage if I ever want to do that. It's not something that's really high on my list of things to do, but just because I don't want to do it today doesn't mean that I won't tomorrow. So anyway, that was it. The only other thing that I wanted to talk about was Carrion. Now I think this is a potential example of exactly what I was kind of talking about with Forsaken Wastes and Augusta's Scepter. I think this card has potential. I just think it has a potential interesting and amusing interaction with the Jumbo Cactuar that came out in Final Fantasy. Where's my cursor? All right, yeah, here we go. I'm just going to jump over to desktop now, and I'll show you what I mean. Anybody who knows Magic and knows Jumbo Cactuar and Carrion knows exactly what I mean, but it's the kind of card that can turn this card at instant speed to 10,001 maggot tokens. Now, maggots have since been retconned, what's it called? Where they retroactively go back and sort of clarify the rules. I can't remember the name of that when that happens. But they've gone and done that, and so maggot tokens are now insect tokens. And there's a bunch of ways that you can then take your 10,000 insect tokens and turn them into basically an instant win against all your opponents. And I'd argue the simplest one is, what's that? Alter Gruesome Fate. Here we go. Common. From Rivals of Ixalan. Each opponent loses 1 life for each creature you control. Just instantly. Well, not instantly, it's at sorcery speed, but you play your Jumbo Cactuar, you attack in response to your opponent trying to get rid of it. You cast your Carrion, and then next main, cast your Gruesome Fate. And deal 10,000 plus damage to each opponent. Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I like it. I think it's a fun kind of potential mechanic. I've never actually sort of pulled it off in game, but and it requires quite a bit of mana. But whatever. We're here to have fun when we're playing Commander anyway. We're not playing for Sheep Station. So, I think that's really all I wanted to kind of say. I'm going to be back with another little video in a little while. I want to talk about the Chocobo bundles and how I feel about them in their current form, and how I feel about what their prospects are going into the future as a sealed entity for value going forward. Spoilers, I think they're one of the very few items on the market currently within the collectible card space that have something approaching arbitrage if you open them. But I will talk about that in greater detail. I've got all my little price listings and stuff all up at the top, and we can sort of walk through that together. And my plan is to open one as well, so stick around if that's the kind of thing that you want to see, and you can catch it on the next video. Don't think there was really anything else that I wanted to talk about, so I will leave you to it. And I'll sleeve all these guys up and I'll pop them in the folder. And I'm actually really looking forward to doing that. It's something that I enjoy. All right, everybody. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.